I always thought the worst thing someone could do on your wedding day was not show up. That felt like the standard line people used, about deadbeat dads or unreliable best friends. But what my sister did was worse. She showed up. Dressed beautifully. Hair perfect. Makeup like she was the bride. She smiled for photos, held my bouquet, clinked champagne glasses, kissed my cheek before the ceremony. All the things a sister is supposed to do. And then she waited. She waited until the moment all eyes were on her, when the microphone was in her hand and the dinner plates were still full. And then she spoke. It was already late into the evening. The ceremony had gone beautifully. Alex, my husband, looked like something out of a magazine in his suit. We'd cried during our vows. The photos had gone off without a hitch, and my grandmother even danced a little during the cocktail hour. Everything was as close to perfect as life ever lets it be. The toast started after the main course. My maid of honor, Nora, gave a warm, slightly tipsy speech about how we used to sneak out in college and how Alex had somehow survived meeting my mother. Everyone laughed. Then it was my dad's turn. He spoke of the day I was born, made a joke about finally getting me off the family payroll, and sat down to thunderous applause. It was light, heartfelt, beautiful. Then came my sister. She stood slowly. All eyes shifted to her. She was glowing, not with happiness, but with something else. A secret she'd been dying to let out. She held the microphone with both hands, like she was scared of what it might do. I remember the first few words. "I'm so happy to be part of this day." She smiled at me. "Truly. You deserve joy." She paused. And then her smile changed, curled just slightly at the corner, like she was about to tell a joke she knew would land hard. I want to be honest with everyone here," she said. "Because this day is about love, and I believe love deserves honesty." Alex shifted beside me. He looked confused. The room had quieted. Forks stopped scraping plates. People leaned forward. "I wasn't sure if I should say this," she went on. "But I've been seeing someone. Someone from my past. And I just want to stop hiding it. Because I think he could be the one." I felt it before I understood it. Like a tremor in the ground before the building starts to sway. "I've been dating Daniel," she said. "And I know some of you remember him as Olivia's ex. But we didn't mean for it to happen. Life's messy, right? Daniel. My ex. My first real love. The man I spent 5 years with. The one I thought would propose before he left me with no explanation. The one I cried over for months. The one I told her I wasn't over even a year later." The room froze. A few guests gasped, a few looked at me, mouths parted in disbelief. Someone awkwardly laughed, thinking maybe it was a bad joke. It wasn't. She just stood there, smiling like she was brave, like she'd done something noble. She raised her glass, expecting a cheer. But the clinking never came. I sat still. Stone. My husband's hand was on mine, squeezing gently, not understanding yet what this meant, not to him, but to me. I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I just looked at her, and for the first time in my life, I saw her clearly. She hadn't just broken a boundary. She had stolen something sacred. Not because she wanted it, but because I had it first. And in front of everyone I loved, she decided that my wedding was the perfect stage to take it back. I didn't move for the rest of her speech. I couldn't. My body was still upright, my fingers wrapped loosely around the base of my glass, but my mind had gone somewhere else. Somewhere far. Somewhere quiet. Like when you're underwater and can see people yelling on the surface but can't hear a word. My wedding was happening around me, and I was suddenly not part of it anymore. I was just present. Not living it. Just watching. She sat down after that. Proud of herself. She gave me a look like we were going to talk later. Like I'd thank her for being honest. Like I'd finally understand her truth. I didn't speak to her the rest of the night. People tried to recover. The DJ, bless his heart, immediately launched into something upbeat. The waitstaff brought out cake. A few brave guests danced, as if pretending hard enough could reset the night. Alex stayed close to me, whispering reassurances. He was angry, but confused. I hadn't told him everything about Daniel. Only the bare bones. We dated for years, it ended badly. What I didn't say was that I had once picked out rings with Daniel. That we had looked at homes together. That I had once come home from work ready to tell him I was pregnant, and found him halfway out the door, suitcase packed, saying he needed time to think. My sister had been there that night. She brought ice cream and curled up next to me while I cried. She said all the right things. You deserved better. He didn't appreciate you. I'd never do something like that to you. Now, looking back, I wonder. How long had she been waiting for her chance? We weren't close in the traditional sense. Not the way sisters are in movies. But we had our moments. Childhood sleepovers. Matching Christmas pajamas. Long phone calls when I moved to the city and she stayed behind. She always copied me, the same haircut, the same style of clothes. She asked about my friends, my routines, my thoughts on love. I thought she was just looking up to me. I didn't realize she was studying me. Daniel was always polite to her. Maybe a little too polite. But I never saw it. I never imagined he'd look at her that way, or that she'd let him. Maybe it started after we broke up. Or maybe it started long before. I'll never know. That's the worst part. The not knowing. The not being able to untangle what was real and what was staged. I couldn't even bring myself to ask her after the speech. Not that night. Not ever, really. After the reception, Alex and I went back to the hotel suite. He tried to cheer me up, ordering champagne, making jokes about how weird my family was. I nodded and smiled, but my mind was still locked on her face. That smile. That little quiver of pleasure when she dropped the name. Like she had been holding it in for months and couldn't wait any longer. She didn't do it because she loved him. She did it because I had already loved him first. That kind of betrayal doesn't come from desire. It comes from competition. It comes from a need to steal the spotlight, even when it isn't yours. Especially when it isn't. I didn't cry that night. I thought I would. But I didn't. Instead, I made a quiet promise to myself. That she could have Daniel and she could have her moment. But she wouldn't get the last word. Not this time. She used my wedding as a stage. Fine. Then I'd make sure she watched me take back every inch of ground she thought she'd stolen. The days after the wedding felt like I was floating through a fog that only I could see. People sent well wishes, posted photos, tagged me in videos of our first dance, all while pretending nothing had happened. As if that speech hadn't landed like a grenade right in the center of the reception hall. As if the air hadn't shifted, the music hadn't stumbled, and my smile hadn't cracked just a little too early. I didn't post anything for a while. I ignored the comments and messages. Even the people who meant well didn't know what to say. And the ones who did reach out? Some of them acted like my sister's toast had been some awkward, impulsive moment, just nerves, maybe too much wine, one cousin said. As if public betrayal could be softened by a vintage Pinot. But the ones who mattered? They knew. Nora, my maid of honor, called me 2 days later. She didn't ask what I was feeling, she already knew. She just said, "I've never seen someone so determined to ruin a moment they weren't even invited to own." That stuck with me. I started thinking less about what had happened and more about what it meant. It wasn't just about Daniel. Not really. He had been a wound I'd mostly closed. But what she did, that was about something older, deeper. Something that had been building for years, one small slight at a time. It wasn't the first time she'd stood too close to something I loved. It was just the first time she'd smiled while doing it in front of everyone. She didn't call me afterward. Not even once. No apology. No message. No follow-up. She posted a photo, though. Her and Daniel on a rooftop bar somewhere. His arm around her waist, her eyes lit up, captioned, "Some love stories take longer to find their way." I stared at it for a long time. The same man who once promised me forever was now posing with my sister like they were the heroes of some romantic tragedy. The audacity stunned me, not just the relationship, but the way she made herself the protagonist in a story she had written with stolen ink. Alex saw it too. He didn't say anything, just looked at me from across the room and waited for my reaction. When I didn't speak, he crossed the space between us and pulled me into a quiet hug. He didn't try to fix it. He didn't offer advice. He just held me. That night, as we lay in bed, he said something that stayed with me. "You don't have to forgive her. But you also don't have to break yourself trying to make her understand." And he was right. So I didn't reach out to her. Instead, I reached in, to the part of myself that had always tried to keep the peace, the part that used to fold at the first sign of conflict. And I asked her what she wanted. And she said, "Take back the story." That's when the idea formed. Quiet, at first. Subtle. But sharp. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't write a Facebook post or send a dramatic text. I wouldn't chase her down for closure she never intended to give. I would rebuild everything she tried to steal, not just my dignity, but the perception she tried to taint. She wanted to humiliate me in public? Fine. Then I'd make sure the world saw who I became after that. And she would have to watch every step of the way, as I turned the ashes she gave me into something that burned brighter than anything she could ever hold. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's a carefully crafted silence. A refusal to explain. A look that says, "You no longer get access to my version of the story." That's where I started. I didn't unfollow her. I didn't block her. That would have been too easy, too theatrical. No, I wanted her to see me. Every curated frame, every moment of joy that didn't include her. I started small. A post from our honeymoon, just a photo of Alex and me laughing barefoot on a beach, captioned simply, "Healing is real when it's shared." The likes came fast, but I wasn't watching the numbers. I was watching the names. And there it was, her view. I could see it. She'd seen it. No like. No comment. Just a pair of quiet eyes in the shadows. Next came the thank you email. I had debated whether to even send one, but I decided to. Not because I wanted to be polite, but because I wanted to be precise. It was beautifully worded. Grateful. Gracious. And buried in the center of the second paragraph, I included one careful line, "To those who lifted love instead of using it to climb onto a stage, thank you, your presence meant everything." I sent it to every guest. Every vendor. Every family member. It didn't take long for the ripples to reach her. She replied, of course. A 4-line text that began with "wow," and ended with "maybe you should grow up." I didn't answer. She didn't deserve my reply. But that didn't mean I stopped. I began slowly peeling her from the edges of my life. Mutual friends who'd played both sides started noticing the shift. I didn't badmouth her, I didn't need to. I just shared receipts. Screenshots of texts. Old messages between her and Daniel that I'd saved and never opened, her telling him, "You're not happy with her. You deserve someone who understands you." Sent weeks before we broke up. I passed them on. Quietly. Selectively. I knew who would talk. Soon enough, the narrative changed. She wasn't just honest anymore. She was calculated. She was selfish. The woman who crashed her own sister's wedding to announce a love affair with her ex. And I didn't lift a finger. I just watched it all unfold. She tried to control it, of course. Posted stories about speaking your truth, not letting bitterness win, and the ever-predictable, "If they talk about you behind your back, you're already ahead." But the tone had shifted. People weren't clapping anymore. Even Daniel, from what I could tell, wasn't enjoying the spotlight. Their posts went from romantic to performative to absent. And it wasn't long before he quietly unfollowed me. Probably tired of watching the woman he left behind build something more beautiful than he ever offered. Meanwhile, Alex and I got closer. Stronger. We turned our energy inward. Began planning our next move, a business idea I'd shelved for years. Something creative, something that let me tell stories that weren't about heartbreak. Something that gave me the pen again. That, more than anything, became the real act of defiance. I started writing the next chapter without her. She tried to hijack the climax of my love story. So I rewrote the ending. And this time, she wasn't in it. It happened exactly 6 months later. I remember the timing because it was the same weekend Alex and I signed the lease for our new studio space, a small downtown office we turned into a creative studio for our growing media project. I was standing near the front window, holding a paintbrush, deciding whether to go with a warm beige or a slate gray, when my phone buzzed. The name on the screen hit me like a chill through my ribs. Her. No text. Just a missed call. I stared at it for a few seconds. Not because I was unsure, I had been sure for months, but because something in me still half expected her to show up in character. Defiant. Superior. But another call followed. Then a message. "Can we talk? Please. I need your help." That was new. I didn't respond. Not right away. I let it sit for a day. Maybe 2. Then I agreed to meet her. Not out of sympathy. Not out of curiosity. I agreed because part of me wanted to hear it from her, not the Instagram captions, not the filtered half-truths, but the reality. The fallout. We met at a small cafe, the kind of neutral ground where people go to surrender. She was already there when I arrived, sitting near the back, sunglasses in her hand, sipping coffee she wasn't tasting. She looked tired. Not physically, but in that way people look when they've spent too long pretending they're okay. She stood when I approached, like she didn't know whether to hug me or not. I didn't offer. We sat. There was no small talk. Just a single breath, then, "He cheated on me." I didn't blink. "With someone I used to work with," she added, like the detail would twist the knife a little deeper. He said he was confused. Said I was impulsive. Dramatic. I took a sip of my tea. Waited. She continued talking, about how he'd moved out, how their fights had gotten uglier, how she'd read messages on his phone and realized he'd been lying for months. She painted herself as blindsided, betrayed. Her voice cracked once or twice, and I wondered if she actually believed she was the victim. Or if this was just another version of the story where she got to be center stage. Eventually, she looked up and asked the question she had clearly been building toward. "I know I messed up. But I thought you, of all people, would understand what it's like to have someone turn on you. That was the moment I knew, she still didn't get it. She thought what she did was a social misstep. An emotional accident. She still believed the damage was shared, that I had hurt, and now she was hurting, and that somehow this made us even. But we weren't. So I looked at her. Really looked. And I said, you didn't just take someone I once loved. You stood up at my wedding, the one day that wasn't about you, and you made it yours. You didn't just betray me. You humiliated me. In front of my husband. My friends. My future. She opened her mouth, but I kept going. And now you want me to hold your hand because the man you stole didn't stay loyal? Do you hear yourself? Her mouth shut again. Her eyes dropped. I stood up. I didn't come here to make peace. I came here so you could see what strength looks like when it doesn't need to perform. She didn't follow me out. She didn't call again. And as I walked back to my car, I felt something lift. Not satisfaction. Not revenge. Just weight. The kind of weight that finally leaves when you stop waiting for someone else to understand your worth. Time has a funny way of sharpening things. Not dulling. Not fading. Sharpening. The edges become clearer. The motives. The patterns. The moments you tried to justify because love was supposed to come with excuses. I see it all now, not in anger, but with a kind of stillness I didn't know I was capable of. It's been nearly a year since the wedding. Our first anniversary came and went quietly, no spectacle, just dinner at the same small restaurant where Alex first said he loved me. He gave me a ring box, and inside was a tiny silver compass on a chain. No jewels. No grand flourish. Just one word engraved inside, true. I want you to always remember, he said, you were never lost. They were just pointing in the wrong direction. That moment meant more than vows ever could. By then, my sister had become more of a shadow than a presence. I saw her on social media sometimes, vague quotes, black and white selfies, the occasional burst of faux wisdom. I heard she tried to start a podcast about healing, but it fizzled out. Apparently, it's hard to teach peace when you haven't made amends with the mirror yet. I never reached out. Not once. I never blocked her either. She remained right there, in the background, able to see everything. And that was the point. Let her watch. I turned the studio, Alex, and I started into something real, not just a side project, but a thriving creative brand. We worked with couples, artists, small businesses, telling stories that felt honest and human. No filters. No noise. Just truth. People resonated with that. I think they could feel it, that I had lived through the kind of betrayal that either breaks your voice or makes it stronger. I chose stronger. The irony is, my sister gave me a gift that day. Not the confession, that was trash wrapped in tinsel. But the clarity. The gift of finally, fully seeing who I was dealing with. Who I had always been dealing with. There's freedom in that. When the mask finally drops and you realize you've been arguing with a character someone wrote to get applause. Once I saw her for who she was, I stopped needing closure. I stopped trying to rewrite the past. And I started writing everything else. There are still moments, quiet ones, where I think about how different it could have been. How nice it would have been to have a sister who actually celebrated me. Who clapped when I won. Who protected the sacred. But those are just passing thoughts now. Not wounds. Just soft echoes of the version of my life I didn't get, and no longer miss. Because this version? It's mine. It's built on laughter with a man who holds my hand without letting go first. It's built on trust, on mornings that start with coffee and end with plans that don't include repairing things I didn't break. It's built on the people who showed up for me when I wasn't shining, who stayed quiet when others gossiped, who stood beside me even when the room turned cold. And my sister? She'll always be a line in the story. An important one. A turning point. The moment the main character realized that not all villains look like enemies. Some wear matching dresses and smile in the pictures. But every story needs that moment, the one where everything falls apart so something better can begin. And this? This was my beginning.